right, good afternoon, everybody. All right, so my name is Eickmeier. You guys are all on a cruise ship, and I'm a guy who's about to give you a tour. All right, welcome aboard the Oasis by the Sea. Oasis on the Sea. This is the largest cruise ship in the world. I've got a really large tour group today. It's almost like you guys are here for a grade or something. So a few stats about the ship before we get started. All right, so this ship is over 1,100 feet long, or 217 feet wide. We're actually 20 stories high right now on the top of the deck. It can hold 5,400 passengers. So you guys have all joined us for a week of fun, right? But do you actually know why we're sitting on top of the water right now? Why we're floating? Anybody? A few people? All right. So before we go on our tour, I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're floating on top of the water, a little bit of science, and then we're going to talk about a bigger picture, why we need ships to continue floating in our society today. So we're going to talk about some buoyancy, something called buoyancy. We're talking about displacement. We're talking about density. And then again, get a little bigger picture as to why we need ships to continue floating. All right, so the principle of buoyancy, discovered or written about by a guy named Archimedes. He's one of those old dead Greek guys, really smart. And as we sit on top of the water, as the ship sits on top of the water, we're actually exerting a force onto the water, and we're displacing water out of the way. So water, like anything else, likes to stay at equilibrium, and so it does kind of the opposite effect, and it pushes back up onto us, or up to us, as we're sitting on top of the water. So again, kind of the example, as I'm standing on the deck, I'm pushing a force on the deck below us. The deck's pushing back on me so I don't fall back on the floor, or fall through the floor. A good example of, I talked about displacement, a good example of displacement, if you got a glass of water and you put an ice cube in it, that water rises. Same kind of thing happens when you put a ship on top of the water. All right, now we're going to talk about something called density. Everybody remembers density from like their high school science class maybe. Everything that we see, touch, feel is made out of molecules, and they're either spread far apart or close together. And the further apart they're spread or closer they're together determines their density. So everyone knows that metal sinks, right? This ship is made out of aluminum, so why is this giant ship made out of aluminum? Why aren't we sinking right now? Ships are designed today with actually pockets of air all throughout the hull, and so when you calculate the density, the overall density of all the different pockets of air all throughout the hull, plus the density of the aluminum, it actually equals the density of the ship is less than the density of water. So that's another reason why we're staying on top of the water right now. All right, now we're going to talk about why we need ships to continue to float. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, 39% of Americans live on the coast or within about 50 miles of the coast. So it's a very important area. Lots of us live there. And if you look at the whole world, according to a study done by the United Nations, over 50% of the world lives within 60 miles of the coast as well. So again, lots of people living by the coast. So ships are very important. According to the International Maritime Organization, over 90% of today's trade still travels by sea. So when you think about travel today or shipping, we think about big cargo planes or maybe the trains and so on. It's actually 90% is still today moved by ships. You think about a couple things in your daily lives like fuel. Us Americans, we use fuel for everything, right? You probably just over the holidays, you might have gone home and seen some of your family and you needed that fuel to get there and back, right? Well, the majority of the world's fuel is still today traveled by sea. Also, if you take a look in your wardrobe, pretty much any piece of clothing, take a look at that tag, and it's probably coming from overseas, right? China or Bangladesh or somewhere like that. More than likely, that piece of clothing came over to us by the sea. All right, so in summary, again, we talked a little bit of science, we talked about some buoyancy, we talked about density, we talked about displacement, we talked about why we need ships to continue floating to bring us those goods and services and fuel that we need. So tonight at dinner, when you're sitting around the table, you can impress the people at your table and tell them why we're floating on top of the water. All right, let's go on our tour.